Good morning. My name is Pastor Mike Brink, and I'm so excited to welcome you to this week's online service. We at Park Avenue Baptist Church would love to connect with you. So if you have a prayer request or have a question about today's sermon, fill out the connection card in the comments section below. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching with us, and we hope you're encouraged by what you hear. Good morning, Park Avenue Baptist Church. Christmas is fast approaching, and we are in week 3 of our series, Royal Expectations. Looking at the events of Jesus' birth, Jesus' life, from a perspective of what does God expect from us as we receive our King, and what did we expect then, and what do we expect now from our King? And so last week, we looked at some of the offerings that were required for Jewish parents, particularly in the event of a firstborn son. And there were a number of things that they needed to do that complicated things. And we talked about the idea that we find things that are inconvenient in our Christmas celebrations today. It doesn't hold a candle to what they dealt with then. And taking the idea of inconvenient from the realm of cultural expectations to spiritual realities, knowing that my sin made it necessary for God to redeem me is both humbling and uncomfortable. We don't like that reality. It doesn't make it any less real. And we landed finally at the idea that what Christ has done for me is my only remedy. It's my only hope of redemption, of a restored relationship with God, of transformation in my own life. I have an image that I want to show you as we head into this week's content. And I would just encourage you, even if you're watching online by yourself, speak out your first reaction to this image. Okay, ready? Yeah, I'm imagining it for some of you where you're like, yes, bring it on, I'm ready for some snow. And for others of you where you're just like, oh, it's just, that does not look appealing in the least. I am definitely closer to the second camp. I suspect that my wife would be closer to the first. But this image summons up a lot of different reactions and emotions for us. And I just want to ask you a follow-up question, just for you to consider. Which of these things would bother you more? An actual snowstorm, so it is starting to fly, it is starting to accumulate, it is piling up, you can see the vehicles fishtailing down the street, or is it more bothersome for you to hear the forecast several days ahead and hear them talking about, oh, a big storm's coming, big storm's coming, big storm is coming? Which of those things bothers you more? The anticipation or the actual reality? And we want to tie that into what we're going to be talking about today, which is one of really a supporting character in the story of the Nativity, and we don't often think about, and that is King Herod. And so if we were to go to Matthew chapter 2, which is where we're going to be looking at today, it starts out and it says, Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the reign of King Herod. So Jesus was born in Bethlehem, a specific city, actually probably more of a village, in Judea. That was the district of Israel during the reign of King Herod. Now, King Herod was an actual historical figure. We have records of him from other sources other than the Bible, that King Herod, or Herod the Great, was a real person who lived in real time, who was born here, started reigning here, died and ended his reign here. We have at least approximate dates for all of those things. And so I just want to pause, because this is a reminder for us that the Bible is not just a collection of fables or made-up stories. They are real events anchored in history. But before we go on, I want to stop and I want to help you understand a little bit more about King Herod, because the story comes more to life when we have some true understanding of who King Herod was. So I want to talk to you about 3 characteristics, we could say it that way, of King Herod that will just help you to understand him a little bit better. First of all, King Herod accumulated incredible wealth from unfair taxes. He was a wealthy king, and Israel was under Roman occupation at this time. King Herod was put in authority by Rome, and he really greatly increased the taxation that was on the people of Israel. So much so that under King Herod's reign, somewhere between 70 and 75% of their income was taken from them as taxes. About 50% of that was filling King Herod's coffers, and it was an amazing time. It was an oppressive time for the people of Israel. There was boiling resentments, and eventually there were revolts as a result of a number of things, but among them, this intense taxation that they were experiencing. Now, why did King Herod need all that money? Why did he need all that revenue? Well, characteristic 2 helps point us to that. King Herod was obsessed with the vast building projects. He built the city of Caesarea as a tribute to Caesar. He built a number of fortresses, places where he and his family could retreat to if there were ever to be an uprising or revolt. He wanted them to be safe, and these places were secure, but they were also elaborate. He built the Herodian palace because he was determined that he would not be forgotten, that he would have the very best. He made very, very generous gifts to Rome, to Caesar, which you always appreciate somebody's generosity when they're being generous with money that they've taken from you. That always helps things along. In Caesarea, they were a significant distance inland, and he didn't like that. He wanted Caesarea to be able to be a port city. And so he actually did construction that moved the coastline in, that carved away part of the land structure there and made Caesarea into a harbor city. He used underwater construction. He constructed aqueducts to bring fresh water to places that were lacking. He was involved in the construction of the Temple Mount, which was an extension of the Jewish temple, but unfortunately he also established pagan cities within Israel to honor a number of pagan gods. So while he did some things that, at least on the surface, would seem like he was supporting them, he also did things that were supporting those who would oppose them. Third characteristic that I just want us to be acquainted with is King Herod defended his power with rampant paranoia. He was incredibly powerful, but he was also incredibly paranoid. he believed that the Jewish people should adore him. He did not understand that they were frustrated with him. He thought he was doing so much wonderful for them that they should be grateful, and didn't recognize how the excessive taxation was affecting daily life. He also had some significant issues. He had 2,000 bodyguards that were watching over him. He eliminated any perceived threat to the throne. And the problem was, often Herod perceived a threat where there wasn't one. And he had kind of a habit of assassinate people now, ask questions later. That was kind of his mode. So he had 10 wives. He had his favorite wife killed because he was afraid that she was plotting against him. He had one of his mother-in-laws killed, 2 of his brother-in-laws killed, and hundreds of innocent people killed because he decided they were part of a conspiracy that did not truly exist. He had one of his sons drowned in the palace pool because he suspected that he was plotting against him, and had his 2 favorite sons strangled because he believed that they were plotting against him. It was later discovered that they actually were not. No one could be as powerful as Herod the Great. That was his opinion, that was his goal. So he gave instructions that after his death, the kingdom that he was in charge of would be divided into 3 parts, and each part ruled by one of his remaining sons. But he didn't want anyone, not even his sons, to have as much power as he had, so he divided that up so they would be less powerful. Toward the end of his life, Herod realized that he was not going to win the Jewish people over, that for whatever reason, they were going to continue to resent him, and he realized that his death would be a cause for celebration, not a cause for mourning, and that bothered him a great deal. So he summoned a group of Jewish nobles to the hippodrome in Jericho. And he had them all gathered there, and it was only once they were there, and you didn't decline an invitation from Herod the Great. When he said you are required to come, you went. And once they were gathered there, they were detained there, and King Herod gave the instructions that when I die, they are all to be executed, because I want there to be weeping in Israel on the day of my death, even if it's not for me. I will cause there to be weeping. Now, after his death, his sister countermanded that order, and those nobles were released to return home to their home cities. But that was the intent of King Herod's heart, that there will be weeping one way or another. So that gives you a little sense, a little background on who King Herod is. Now, with all of that in mind, let's jump back into our story. Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the reign of King Herod. About that time, some wise men from eastern lands arrived in Jerusalem asking, "Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We saw his star as it rose, and we have come to worship him." Now, does anything grab your attention already? Herod loved his authority. He was paranoid about being taken from him, and these travelers, these scholars from eastern lands show up and ask, Where is the newborn King of the Jews? Now, King of the Jews is a title that Caesar and the Roman officials used to refer to Herod the Great. They referred to him as the King of the Jews. So, to have these men show up asking, where is the newborn King of the Jews? Immediately set paranoia in motion, because suddenly Herod is going, I have a rival, I have someone who desires to supplant me, to replace me, to overthrow my kingdom. So we continue, verse 3. King Herod was deeply disturbed when he heard this, understatement of the century, as was everyone in Jerusalem. Now, when King Herod started getting paranoid, bad things tended to happen. Innocent people would be rallied up because he assumed they were not innocent, and bad things would happen. So the fact that King Herod gets this news disturbed him, but it also disturbed everyone anywhere close to him. He called a meeting of the leading priests and teachers of religious law and asked, where is the Messiah supposed to be born? So Herod had two urgent questions that he wanted answers to. Who is this upstart king? And where is this upstart king? Because his immediate plan, his intention was, I need to know who this is, and it's a newborn, it's a baby. I can easily care for this now. There will not be someone who replaces me as King of the Jews. I'm taking them out. And so these priests and teachers of religious law answer him, and they, in Bethlehem of Judea, they said, for this is what the prophet wrote, and you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not least among the ruling cities of Judah, for a ruler will come from you who will be the shepherd for my people Israel. Now, Bethlehem was less than 5 miles from Jerusalem, where all of this is taking place. So to be told, where is he? Oh, he's close by. He's really a very, very short distance from where we are speaking now. Verse 7, then Herod called for a private meeting with the wise men. So he did not want those priests and teachers of religious law present here. This was just between he and the wise men. And he learned from them the time when the star first appeared. This was part of Herod's plan B. Plan A was to make a very selective strike and to eliminate this child. But he knew that there was a possibility that he would not be able to make that happen, so he started formulating his plan B. Then he told them, the wise men, go to Bethlehem and search carefully for the child. And when you find him, come back and tell me, so that I can go and worship him too. Now, in my household, my kids would call that suspicious, because that is not true to the reputation and the character of King Herod. He did not intend, come back and tell me because I want to go and worship him. No, I want to go and kill him, was the heart of this man. Verse 9. After this interview, the wise men went their way, and the star they had seen in the east guided them to Bethlehem. It went ahead of them and stopped over the place where the child was. Verse 10. When they saw the star, they were filled with joy. They entered the house and saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasure chests and gave him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Now, something that's really important here, don't need to spoil your nativity scene or anything like that, but they are at this point still in Bethlehem, but they entered the house where they were. So they were not still in the stable. Jesus was not still in the manger. He was probably under 2 years old, but not still the newborn king that we think of the shepherds coming and gathering on one side of the manger and the wise men coming on the other side. The time frames don't line up for that. But they came, they bowed, and they worshiped, and they put their money where their mouth was. They came with lavish gifts for this baby king. When it was time to leave, they returned to their own country by another route. Why would they do that? For God had warned them in a dream not to return to Herod. So they get done there, and instead of heading back to Jerusalem to report back to Herod, they headed home another way. Now, these were referred to as wise men. Had they already figured out something about Herod doesn't match up? They probably had heard some of his reputation, and I don't know what they had already figured out on their own, but God gave them direct instruction in a dream not to return to Herod. So one of the points that I think we can draw out of this that is such a powerful reminder for us is that God is always at work, and his work is always good. He doesn't miss any of the details. He knew how to get these men to Jesus. He knew how to get them away safely. He didn't miss anything when he allowed them to stop and visit with King Herod first. That wasn't a big oops. God had purpose in all of it. And if God can have that kind of purpose in these minute details of the nativity story, we can trust him with the minute details of our lives as well. Now, we don't always get satisfying answers. Sometimes we wonder, why is this happening like this? This doesn't seem right. And that heartache is part of living in a broken world. This story is not all sunshine and wonderfulness. There is darkness that is part of this story. Verse 16. Herod was furious when he realized that the wise men had outwitted him. And so, failing plan A, finding out exactly where this newborn king of the Jews was, Herod enacts plan B. He sent soldiers to kill all the boys in and around Bethlehem who were 2 years old and under, based on the wise men's report of the star's first appearance. So, failing to be able to make a direct strike on the specific target, he did the next best thing. He made a sweeping attack and had all the boys 2 years of age and under massacred. Now, Bethlehem and the surrounding region wasn't a huge population. We can guesstimate, scholars have guesstimated that we're probably talking 20 to 30 boys that would have been in that bracket. First of all, that is still a tragedy. And that is very, very much a tragedy if that's your son, your baby boy. And we can look at something like this and we can say, but God had so many details under control. Why would he allow this to happen? I don't have a perfect answer there. And I would never want to be looking in the eye of a parent who was questioning why did God allow this. We can say some very shallow, very trite things in those moments. My answer would be, I don't know why. The verses that follow this indicate that this event was an answer to prophecy back in Jeremiah. So God intended for this to happen for some purpose. Part of that purpose was so that there would be confirmation of things written generations prior, that they came true with precise detail in the present. That's not God's only purpose, and I don't claim to understand more than that. As a takeaway for us, I would put it this way, that just because God knows about all the evil that could happen doesn't mean that he stops all the evil that could happen. That's not necessarily comforting, I realize that. But even when evil is unleashed, God does not turn away. He remains present, and he desires to be a comfort. So let's real quick look back at what we learned about King Herod, what characterized him. He accumulated incredible wealth from unfair taxes. He was obsessed with vast building projects, and he defended his power with rampant paranoia. How did those things work out for him? Well, he accomplished a lot of things with that money. But you get to spend some, you get to give some away, you get to impress some people that will then go on and be more impressed by someone else over something else. So that one didn't seem really to satisfy, to take. He was obsessed with vast building projects. He did some amazing work. Some of it still remains, but much of it has been destroyed by the passage of time. Not really a great success there. And he defended his power with rampant paranoia. And how did that work out for him? Well, not well. He bore a burden of killing people that he cared about because he thought they were a threat. And in some cases at least, he had a wife, he had sons, just wanted his love, just wanted his attention, just wanted to be with him. And so we look at King Herod, and King Herod was determined to be remembered, but he is only remembered as a minor character in the story of Jesus Christ. The man who was called the King of the Jews is largely forgotten by that title, because Jesus Christ was the King of the Jews and became known as such. Perhaps not in the way they would have anticipated. And so I just want to encourage us to take the story of King Herod really as a cautionary tale about misplaced hope and misspent efforts. And we can look back with the benefit of a broader perspective and go, oh, King Herod, what a loser. He was hoping for all the wrong things. He put so much effort forth, and it really did not benefit him at all. But how much can that characterize us? Where in your life do you see misplaced hope? Where in your life do you see misspent efforts? See, it's all fine and good for us to pick on King Herod from a safe distance, but sometimes when we turn those same questions on ourselves, for many of us, 2020 has been an upsetting year. And some of that, not all of that, but some of that may be because of misplaced hope. That, well, we're going to go on this vacation and it's going to be the most amazing thing. And, oh, we're going to have this graduation party and this is going to be phenomenal. And all these different things that don't come to fruition, and we can become embittered by those. So I want to ask a couple more questions since I'm probably already in trouble. First, what do you worship? Really? I know the right answer. Oh, I worship God. Do you? I would encourage you to follow the trail of your affection, your energy, your money, and your time. Follow that trail, and it will show you what you really worship, regardless of what you would claim that you worship. So to put it another way, I would say, look over your 2020 calendar and see what things you made a priority time and time again throughout the year. Look at your bank statement. Where did your money go? What did you choose to spend on? And I would ask you to look at what fuels you. What gives you purpose to get out of bed in the morning and face another day? And as you answer those questions, it does some analysis on our hearts and helps us to see what we truly worship. Jesus, during his ministry, did a lot of teaching. And there's a verse in particular that I think is very beneficial for us. It would have been very beneficial for King Herod if he had been able to embrace this mindset from Matthew chapter 6. Jesus, in teaching, said, "Don't store up treasures here on earth, where moths eat them and rust destroys them, and where thieves break in and steal." So, in closing, I just have a challenge for you. I would encourage you to fill in this blank. I put my trust in. You may have one thing that immediately springs to mind. You may have several. I'd encourage you to take a little bit of time, make a list. I put my trust in. It's easy to put God on that blank and go, I trust God. Does your life, do your choices, do those bear that out? Is there evidence to it, or is it just something that you say? In this Herod season, please don't take up a Herod mindset. A mindset that is paranoid, that is scrambling, that is trying so hard to protect what you already have. And you just end up living a life of fear, a life of being on the attack toward people who are just trying to get close to you. And so my challenge for us today is to say, I put my trust in what? And then, is that a good thing? Is that the course I want to continue on? Or do I need to make some course adjustments? Thanks for being with us. Let's close in prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for your goodness. God, I thank you for the example of Herod, and there's a lot that we can learn about who you are and about who we don't want to be. And so, God, would you continue to teach us during this season? We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Have a great week.